It's Thursday, October 3rd, and I'm your host, Paula Hersey. On today's show, we celebrate Channel 18. Every year, we produce hundreds of segments in the studio or on location. Our mission here at the town of Barnstable is simple: to engage our community with content that matters and to celebrate the quality of life within our villages. The following segments you'll see today have won awards at the Regional Industry Video Festival for 2018. On the Hyannis Harbor is a small park named after Ralph Bismore, a Hyannis resident who died overseas during World War II. The Gateway Greeter program found several living relatives who remembered their brother. They called him Jerry, and Channel 18 had the honor of recording their memories of their brother. Meet Joe and Ginny Bismore. And the third place winner in the history.
Yes, he was on a B-26 like that one, only with just a single tail. And I have heard several different stories of how he died. I don't know which is actually the way he died, but it doesn't make any difference. He died in the plane. And I have been once down to the cemetery in Washington and visited his gravesite, and that was really an emotional experience. But he was really a saint. He was a remarkable, amazing, lovely person, and as opposed to some of the rest of us who were gruff and not so nice. We'd get a letter once in a while, because that's about all the communications we had. The telephones were all busy with war business. And so occasionally we'd get a letter, and we, my mother and my sisters, would send him a package with some cookies and stuff in it. I don't know if they ever got there or not. Or if they did get there, they were probably gulped up by all of his friends, like it was when I was in the Army. I'd get a package and I'd have 2 cookies and the rest of them would just go to everybody else. But no, we didn't have much constant awareness of where he was, which is good, because, but anyway, like when he went over to Europe, I had no idea he was in Europe until we discovered that he was no longer with us. Well, we were a ragtag bunch because we were all very different. Jerry was the life of the party. He was just, well, his smile lit up the room, and he was just funny and fun, and at the same time he was very serious, depending what he was doing. Then he went roller skating at Mill Hill one time, and the gal in front of him tripped, and he went to jump over and he kicked her with his skate and broke her jaw. So he went to visit her in the hospital, and darned if they didn't get married. We were patriotic, we loved America, we loved Cape Cod, we loved the people on Cape Cod because they're friendly people. Whenever we'd get away from Cape Cod, we'd run into the brusque, well, like we'd go to Boston and people were not friendly and warm. And so we appreciated where we were. We appreciated the beauty of the place and the willingness to share among people.
Teeth were like, like some animals' teeth, and so they called him Jerry Muskrat. And then they gradually dropped it to just Jerry. Every time I reached for something on my plate to eat, it was gone. He had taken it. And I'd say, I just had a piece of bread and butter here, where'd it go? But then I'd look on his plate. There it was. But he was a good jokester. He wasn't nasty. He was just fun. always, when he was coming home from work at night, he was always whistling. If it was raining or snowing or what, he'd whistle. His head, no hat on. He was whistling along and come in. His hair was dripping wet. He would. All I can say is I was so glad he was my brother. He worked in a drugstore. And in fact, he got his diploma to get to. And then about the time he got his diploma for it to be a degree, to get his degree, he had to go. He knew he was going to go in the service, so he enlisted. And it wasn't too long after that before he was killed. But as I say, he said to me, the day I saw him the last time we got together, he said, "This is the best time of my life." And he said, "If I'm going to spend the rest of my life here." And he had 6 more years. But that's the way it goes. And he loved for his country too. And whenever a plane went to the airport, when it was just a dirt road, like, he'd run up there and see who it was. If it was somebody he knew famous, he'd be glad to greet them and all that. And if they weren't famous, he'd help try to work and get famous. He was full of aircraft. But it's just so too bad that a plane had to be what took his life. But God has the plans, we don't. And when we got back, and I got the mail, and it was the one saying that he had died, and I just dissolved into tears. And this girl took me up to her and said, "Jerry, she needs you down here." So he came down, and I was brokenhearted. So of course she couldn't say it to Jerry because he wasn't there, but anyhow, he was there usually when we wanted him. And he was there when his wife needed him too. I do remember that it changed from Ocean Park, but I didn't know exactly how close the connection was. But I was very, very proud when it became Bismore Park. My brother's name is Bismore Park. My brother's name is Bismore, and it's named after my brother, and he was killed in World War II. And I'm very, 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 very proud of him. And not only for being that name, but just because who he was.
It's no surprise that one of our video awards went to a water quality segment. Our trip on the water through North Bay with Tom Marcotti and Neil Churchill illustrated how water testing for bacteria is done to keep our shellfish safe for consumption. Another third-place finish at the Video Festival in the category Community Impact.
Why don't we start, Neil, Station 4, and we'll do 11.5, and that'll be part of the tour. And then we'll hit North Bay.
All right.
And then we'll drop everybody off at Bridge Street.
We're required to sample every area that's open to shell fishing 5 times a year. And we do it on adverse conditions where we go out and sample it in the outgoing tide or after rainfall events. And part of the process that we do that, we go to every area has a number of stations in it based on how big the area is and or how complicated the area is in terms of pollution sources coming in. So it's usually anywhere from 3 to 16 stations in an area. It all depends on how complicated the area is. I mean, a big open coastal area will have like 3 stations. You know, here we have North Bay has like 8. It all depends on how complicated the area is and what's going on. Okay. Inside the bottles are sterile. because we autoclave. What you want to do when we get to the station, take off the cap, don't touch the inside of the cap or the inside of the bottle, and you hold the bottle so the open side down, go down at least a foot, invert it like that, let all the air come out, bring it back up to the surface, pour off the top inch, and then cap it. The reason we do that is that you get down below the surface, so you avoid any surface scum at all. Bring it back up, then you pour it off, so in case you got some by mistake, you pour it off. You cap it, you pour off an inch, that way when we get back to the lab, there's enough airspace. When the lab technician gets to it, they can use it to help shake it up, to stir it before, because it sits in the cooler for like a couple hours, so everything that's settled in the bottle settles to the bottom. So you want to get a good sample, so you shake it out before you do the process. And we try to do it with the towns because it's a cooperative effort from them. It's also easier for me to come down and meet Tom, jump in his boat, go out and do it, and then bring my own boat down, launch it, and have to bring a second person. Since we're both out, in case we see something, we both see at the same time. That way, when he goes back to his boss and says, this is what I saw, we need to fix it, I go back to my boss and tell them that we saw a problem, needs to be fixed. That way it's double, it's that way you have two eyewitnesses to anything. If we have a clean water, it means you can take clean shellfishing. The shellfish that you eat is nice and clean and safe to eat. Also, some people feel that if the water around their property is cleaner, it's nice and clean, it's worth more. So that's a public perception, but basically it's required that if you want an area to be open to shellfishing, we have to test it.
For those viewers who have watched Channel 18 over the years and follow us on Facebook and Instagram, winning an award for Diamondback Terrapin Turtle segment seems like a shoo-in. Channel 18 spent a morning out in the Great Marsh of Sandy Neck with Natural Resource Officer Sean Cordes to document the start of the Head Start program with turtle hatchlings. In the science category, my favorite all-time segment of Turtle TV won first place at the Alliance for Community Media Northeast Video Festival in Science. It's back to school for the Diamondback Terrapins. The Head Start program is in full swing out here in Sandy Neck. With me today, Natural Resource Officer Sean Cordes. Sean, we've got some babies.
We do, yeah. Yep, so this is always one of my favorite times of the year. It's in that stage of the program where a lot of these nests that were laid in June and July are finally starting to hatch out. So we're starting to see the small Diamondback Terrapin hatchlings in the wild make their way out to the marsh. And then we're also getting our first hatchlings for the Head Start program that we do here in the town of Barnstable. So we're out monitoring some of those nests today and getting them ready for the school year.
Right, so let's talk a little bit about this Head Start program and why it's necessary for these little turtles to really survive in the wild now.
Yeah, so the Diamondback Terrapin is a protected species in here in Massachusetts. It's listed as threatened. A couple of reasons for that. Historically, the Diamondback Terrapin was actually hunted for food for a period of time. Turtle soup was a delicacy back in the 19th century, early 20th century, and then habitat loss certainly had an impact on their populations as well. Salt marshes, like a lot of wetlands, have been destroyed and filled in over the years. So we have these few remaining populations here on Cape Cod, the one in the town of Barnstable being out here in the Barnstable Great Marsh, and they nest right here at Sandy Neck Beach. So because their populations are historically lower than they likely have been, it's that much harder for for them to be able to continue this process year after year. Terrapins generally survive by laying a lot of eggs, and a small fraction of those eggs will naturally make it to adulthood, but the percentage is only about 1 in every 100 eggs. We've faced a lot of issues here with predation on both nests and hatchlings, so this Head Start program is a good way to be able to combat some of that and get some of these turtles sort of bigger and stronger than they would be in the wild before we release them back out, which should, bring that chance of survival up quite a bit.
Right. So they don't follow rules of the road or anything. So a lot of these are like literally in the middle of the trail where they'll lay their eggs. What happens when that is like, vehicles are passing through this all the time?
Yeah, exactly. So the trails that these diamondback terrapins cross when they go from the marsh into the sand dunes where they nest is also made out of sand. So generally it's a hiking trail for most. There's only a few vehicles that can access these trails because there are small camps and cottages out here. But to a terrapin, that trail is no different than the sand dunes beyond it, and so it looks like a good nesting spot for them. So these nests that are laid in the trail would otherwise be run over if we weren't out monitoring them. What we're able to do is actually find those nests and carefully extract them and relocate them to a new, safer site. And we monitor those out, throughout the season until this time of year when they hatch out. And those are the turtles that we use for this Head Start program. And they will be, raised by schools and some other organizations throughout the season, so that we can release them out next season.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about the Head Start program itself. So these turtles don't remain with you at the gatehouse. They go to schools and senior centers. And so tell us how that works.
Yeah. So once these nests have started hatching out, which we're seeing this week, we've had our first hatchlings sort of make it to that stage. We take care of them here at Sandy Neck until they get to the point where their yolk sac dries up. That's on the plastron, or that sort of underside of their shell. And that actually provides them with enough energy and nutrients to, in the wild, be able to make it out to the marsh or to make it to a nice spot in the sand dunes to be able to burrow down and sort of go into a type of hibernation throughout the winter. So these particular turtles for our Head Start program aren't doing that. They're not going out to the marsh this winter, but we still have to wait for those yolk sacs to dry up before they can start eating on their own. So once that happens, they get transferred over to our main headquarters at MEA, and they're in small tanks there until the point where they're able to feed on their own. And from that point, we're able to distribute them out to schools, to libraries, all of these great programs that are part of the overall Head Start program. And they stay in those tanks throughout the winter time. And instead of in the wilds, they'd be hibernating, not doing much, not growing. They're in these tanks in warm water, they're eating lots of food every day, and they're growing big and strong. And generally, throughout that 6 to 8 months, they're gonna grow to be about the size of a 3-year-old turtle. So their shell's nice and strong and solid, and they're released right back out into the marsh. So a lot of those predators that would normally go after them when they're, just a tiny little hatchling aren't gonna have that opportunity. So it's been a really good system. We've seen it, it's been pretty successful thus far. So we're excited for another year of it.
So tell me a little bit about what kids are learning when you put a turtle in a classroom, or even libraries or a senior center. What do people learn from this opportunity?
Yeah, well, it's a great program. They learn everything from just the anatomy of that animal, of a little turtle, to the ecology of the whole system here at Sandy Neck. So they're learning all about the resources here in the Great Marsh and the Barrier Beach, and they're also learning about what we can do to protect species in the world and here in our own backyard. So they are working with an endangered species and understanding that it's a fun process to be able to be a part of this program and watch them grow, but it's also really important for conservation efforts. They are having a direct impact on restoring a population right here on Cape Cod. So this is one of those nests that's part of our Head Start program. As you can see, that's a bucketed nest, one that we relocated right from the marsh trail just off to our left-hand side here. And what I'll be doing now is pulling this cap off the top and checking to see where we're at with the hatching process. So we have a couple of hatchlings right here on the top, which is a good sign. So we'll be pulling this nest and bringing it back to the garage here at Sandy Neck to evaluate the rest of the hatching. But both of these individuals look nice and healthy. They're a good size, and if you look at the bottom, they still have a little bit of that yolk sac, but it is starting to dry up pretty nicely. So we'll probably have them for a couple of days before they go back to the office and start swimming around and hopefully feeding pretty soon here as well. So we can check real quick and just see where we're at with the rest of these eggs in here. So we have a few more in here as well. And it's interesting, you always have to be very careful at this point. You know, not only are the eggs delicate, but you'd be surprised at how soft the shells are on these hatchlings when they first come out. Even though they look, you know, sort of just like a miniature version of some of the adults, you know, they're still quite fragile at this point in time. Which is why, at this size, you know, predators can be such an issue. There's, you know, everything from birds to raccoons, and fox can sort of eat them whole. We'll take the whole nest back with us.
Oh, because now they're hatching out, so they've started the process.
So we'll put them on a heat lamp as the rest of them continue to incubate.
One.
But yeah, we gotta, it looks like most of them have already hatched. Sometimes it takes a while for them to either emerge out, and oftentimes too, you know, one of the other things that they can do in the wild is when they hatch out, they actually stay right there in the nest bowl and just wait until the spring to emerge and go out to the marsh.
Wow.
And again, that's you know, an adaptation to help combat the fact that there's so many predators. So if every single nest hatched out and went straight for the marsh, their chances of you know, even just a couple predators taking most of them out is high. So.
My goodness. Are
Yep,
they
there's
alive?
at least two. Yep, they're alive. So I'll I think they're enjoying it in here. But yep, they are ready to go. There's another one down below that.
Wow.
There's 5. You can see there's, you know, an egg in here too that's still unhatched. A couple of them.
Oh my goodness. Ask at that. Oh my gosh. That's so cool.
Yeah, I'll see if I can show you guys that real quick. Yeah, there's one in here that's ready to hatch.
Is it like cracked?
Yep. Yeah, so the turtle's in there. It's you know, started to crack out of its shell, and you know, pretty soon it should be, you know, probably on its way out. So it's hard. It might be hard to see on the cameras, but I can show you on these animals. On the very tip of their nose, when they're first born, you can see that little point.
Yeah.
That sharp point. So that's an egg tooth. A lot of reptiles have this. A lot of birds have this, and that's there to help them actually crack through that shell of their egg to start out with and emerge. So you also see that out here on, you know, like the piping plovers and the least terns. They'll have those, and it'll go away after a period of time. So these same turtles, if they're the ones that, for example, stayed underground in the dunes over winter and they came out, that would be gone by the springtime. So you can tell that, you know, they had hatched out in the fall and were just emerging.
Oh, no kidding. So cool.
Yeah. One of the things we have to be careful with when we do catch them at this point is there's potential that they could, if they don't hatch out of the egg fast enough, they can actually dry to that egg and get stuck, and it can pull the yolk sac out.
Off, yeah.
Which does happen in the wilds, but yeah, we definitely are mindful of that and careful to make sure that they get ample opportunity to not do that.
Stay tuned tomorrow for one more special award and how Channel 18 will be changing and leveraging its talented staff in the art of storytelling for the town of Barnstable. I'm Paula Hersey, and thank you for watching Barnstable Today.